Well, hi everyone, this is Caroline,
And this is Kurt.
and welcome to our podcast, The Business of.
Christmas.
You'll see today that I don't have Kurt sitting with me here, but I have a special guest who is Joshua Senneff, who is the CEO of Natura out of San Antonio, Texas. Welcome, Josh. Great.
Hey, glad to be here. Glad to be your backup
Hey,
when Kurt's out.
I know. We always need a good backup, right?
You know, I know you've been doing this for quite some time now, and I've been excited to join you. And so, yeah, kicking Kurt out. That's how we're going to say it. We're kicking Kurt out
Yeah.
and inviting me on, and I'm really glad
And
to be
also,
here.
if it goes well, we might not invite Kurt back.
That's right. Well, I'm doing my best.
I know.
So,
I know. He was sorry not to be here.
We'll let the audience decide.
The reality is, shall I tell you what the reality is, Josh?
Let's do
We've
it.
only got two mics, so there wasn't a mic. There wasn't a mic for Kurt.
Should we let him know that Kurt's in the room right over there? Hey, Kurt.
Hey, so the reason that I've wanted you to have a guest as a long time is really to talk a little bit about Natura and their involvement with Christmas. So can you just share a little bit about Natura for our audience and what you guys do?
Yeah, so I think a majority of your audience probably does what Natura does. We're interior landscapers. We put plants in malls, office buildings, hotels, corporate facilities, pretty much everywhere you go, right? You notice the plants. In fact, you probably notice it more when there aren't plants there. You just kind of get that cold, sterile feeling.
For sure.
But there has to be companies who design and then maintain those products, and that's what we do. But your question was kind of the entrance into beautiful holiday decor. And really that comes back to a horticultural reason, which is one plant that you either love it or hate it. If you get to enjoy it, you love it. If you have to maintain it, you have this love.
I know what you're going to say.
With it. Yeah, and that's the poinsettia. So we install thousands of those across the state of Texas and Florida, and it's kind of a finicky plant, right? They need a lot of water, and then all of a sudden they're overwatered, and that's kind of like the environment that produces, and they're just a finicky plant.
Yeah.
But we love them because we get to sell a lot of them. But that was really the entrance into holiday decorating, right? So we had a client, and this goes back about over 35 years ago.
Wow.
We've been in business. We're on our 41st year in business. So a client said, hey, love the poinsettias. Can you put a wreath on the door? And we're like, well, yeah, sure, why not? So you go down to one of those tents on the side of the highway where they're selling live, wreaths and trees. Get one perfect size, going to fit the door, and you install it. And then you get a phone call a couple weeks later, and they're like, there's needles all over the floor.
Yep.
Well, that's what happens when you have live decor. And so we quickly realized that there's got to be a better way to go about doing this and keeping those alive and looking good with a lot of clients was going to be quite a challenge.
Yeah.
So that's when you kind of get into the artificial PVC use. So that, again, was over 35 years ago. And there's been a lot of things that we've learned through that. When I talk to companies who do what we do, who are kind of resistant to getting into it, it's probably because you don't know what you don't know, or you do know what you do know, and you don't know that there's a better way to go about doing it. And so we've learned a lot over those 35 plus years.
Yeah. So no regrets about going into the commercial Christmas business.
In general, no.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly there are situations where like, why are we doing this? I want to love Christmas. I love that time of year, but it is also our busiest time of year.
For sure.
And so you can kind of build up a little bit of angst towards it. But at the end of the day, it can be a very profitable side of your business too.
Yeah. Well, I talk to a lot of, on my travels and when I go out and speak at conferences, I talk to a lot of people that are a little bit on the fence. Like, we dabble, we do a couple of jobs, and they're kind of scared to make that next step. to going into that. So I think, the whole point of getting you in on the show today was really kind of to highlight the good parts of that, because obviously if you've been doing something for 35 years, it's successful for you.
Yeah.
So what does it look like from a monetary point of view as far as, your numbers through the year, how much, what is the percent of takings?
Yeah, so it's part of our business that's grown every year. Certainly there's been a lot of economic ups and downs, but really without putting a whole lot of emphasis from a marketing standpoint, our holiday division has really grown. Part of that's because we've got a very large customer base, that we're able to have conversations with in regards of what we do. But yeah, it's about 35%
Wow.
of
Wow.
our total revenue.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
It is. It's a lot to stack onto the, back end, of a year. But, arguably very important. It can sometimes seem like you're almost standing up a new business or a different business within your business. But really with that volume, it's become a year-round type of focus for us.
And I know that you've told me, off camera, that your salespeople sell Christmas all year round, right? It's something. It's kind of part of one of the lines of business that you provide at Natura.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really got to be. Now, the customers may not be seasoned to wanting to have that conversation that early, but we want to make sure that we're providing the tools to our team to be able to have those conversations, because it's, being 35% of our business, it's a big part of our sales and design team's goal. And so we want to, kind of take that out over the course of the year versus just having a focus, in July, August, September, and leading up to Christmas, which many companies do. We just prefer to spread that out. And if there's an opportunity where a client's wanting to have a conversation about that in terms of, what kind of designs are you offering? What is this going to cost me? We want to have those tools to the team very early.
I hear from a lot of my existing clients that they don't actually start selling until probably about August. Some even September. I personally think that's very late. I think if you have the opportunity and you're front of a client showing your lines of business, that bringing up Christmas early is good. But how successful are you guys at Natura at bringing the business in early? Because what I hear from some of my other clients, that's some customers don't want to talk about it in February or March.
Yeah. Well, every year is a little bit different. Every market's a little bit different. Every salesperson's a little bit different, right? Some really love it. It's their passion, and they sell plants on the side.
Okay.
For many of them, plants are their passion, and they sell holiday on the side.
Okay.
And I hate kind of admitting that, because at the end of the day, it is a really big offering with what we do. But just to kind of give you a time frame, their goal is spread out, over the course of 12 months.
Okay.
So sitting, in the July, August arena, we're typically seeing that we're about 30% of our year-to-date goal. So that still leaves a big chunk, on the back end. And we know that, but it also feels pretty good to be sitting, 30, 40% of your annual goal before a lot of people have really even started having conversations with clients.
Yeah. That's crazy. So you talked a little bit about your salespeople having the sales tools that they needed. Can you touch kind of what you mean? Like, have they physically got things, or what are you talking about when you talk about sales tools?
Yeah, absolutely. We're really big in making sure that our team has the tools they need to do their job. As you know, every year pricing changes.
For sure.
And with pricing changes, there are also design changes. We may be able to get this flower this year, but next year we won't. And so there are, little tweaks and changes that we have to make to that. So first and foremost, from a pricing standpoint, we want to make sure that they have that in front of them. And it's not where they need to, give me a call. Hey, this is the tree that they want. Can I get a price on that? I want them to be able to negotiate in front of the client as best as we can. So making sure that not only do they have that, but they're very aware of where they can go with it. And then, equally as important, or maybe for most more important, is what is this going to look like? Right. So
yeah.
they're going to want to have, high res pictures of these designs that we're able to present to them. We've got many options. My hope is, and what we see is a lot of clients or our sales team will bring in, hey, these are the 3 or 4 designs that I think are really going to work within your space. We certainly have others if you'd like to take a look at them. But you can, in every sale, if you're providing too many options, people can freeze up, and that's certainly the case.
Like a kid in a candy store, right?
Well, and just more so with design, right? People want to make the right decision, even though, there's 5 different things that would look great, but people just maybe don't feel like, hey, I'm a great designer. And so we really need to bring that skill set in and say, hey, not only do I feel like these are great options for you, but this is why.
Yeah. What is there anything that if you are talking to a client and it is February or March or even April, so it's early in the system, early in the season, is there anything that you offer the clients? Do you offer discounts for early signing, or I don't know, because this is what people
That's exactly
ask.
what we call it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we do. We provide an early signing discount.
Okay.
And like I told you, we get about 30% of our goal.
So that works for you then, obviously.
It encourages a lot of people, and certainly, so for us, we expire that at the end of August.
Okay.
And so it really encourages, at a minimum, it allows us to have a conversation with people. And there are other things that we'll do too. It's a challenging business in that you buy all this product up front, right? I mean, we probably had conversations on this very podcast about going to market and making some pretty big commitments. Now, those vendors are usually able to work with you in terms of Christmas dating, but there are many times where you've got to buy this product long before you've designed it, installed it, invoiced it, and received payment for it, right? So we'll also offer a monthly discount. If somebody wants to pay for this over the course of 12 months,
okay,
or the term of the contract on a monthly basis, we'll offer a discount there as well, because we've got to then go borrow that money, or cash that we should be putting to use in other areas. We've just invested in product that we're not able to sell. So there's a couple things that we'll do to really entice customers to do things that help us out from a business standpoint.
I actually really like that idea, and I really haven't talked about it with any of my other clients. But I know that you're a service company, and you're always looking at your RMR and what that looks like month on month. So if you can turn those Christmas accounts into monthly revenue, that's huge, because if you're paying for product at the beginning of the year, at least you're getting some of that in, correct?
That's right. And to be completely honest, a lot of our clients have been like, oh, great, I already have this budgeted. It's not a problem for me to pay it monthly. I mean, certainly companies are looking at their cash flow as well. But really, even some of our largest clients are like, hey, for a discount like that, I'm totally willing to pay this monthly, because it just makes business sense for them as well.
Yeah. So let's turn the subject now. You're obviously doing Christmas. We know it's seasonal. I know that you employ a lot of people that are doing their day-to-day job. So how do you handle staffing getting up into the season when it comes to installation and takedown? And, you've got offices, branches all over Texas and also Florida. I think there's 8 in total, I think. I'm not sure if I've got that right. But, how do you handle the staffing? Because, I mean, if it's 35% of your business, that's a lot of Christmas. How do you ramp up to get it all done?
It's always a challenge. And that's not unique to, this industry.
For sure.
But I guess it is, in the sense that you're not bringing these people on full time, right? It's clearly temporary work. Christmas comes the same time every year. We've got a lot of work to do, as we said. It's over 35% of our business, and you can't ramp that up with your existing staff. It's just too much to do in a short period of time, because you can't get in there too early, right? You hear a lot of people, the big debate, when is it that we can start seeing, Christmas items on the shelf from a retail standpoint? And certainly commercially, we can't get in there and install this stuff. So that's always a big challenge. And for us, we use temporary work. There's certain places that we know to go to and certain places we know not to go to find help. But we've got a very extensive training program that we walk them through, incentives to keep them on,
Okay, that's interesting.
Well, you got to ask yourself, why are these people temporary?
I get it. I get it.
You got to motivate and inspire from a different standpoint. But then you also want to make sure that you're maintaining your quality.
Yeah.
And for us, that is making sure that we have Natura eyes on every job, at every installation, to make sure that we're doing it in what we call the Natura way. And
So checking on that quality control, basically. Yeah.
yeah, you can train that in, and certainly we do. But I think you also know, and your listeners probably recognize, that some people have an eye for it and some people don't. I think
That's so true.
You could probably walk up to a tree and be like, no. And maybe the average individual would be like, oh my gosh, look at this beautiful decor. But the little nuances that go into really making the wow
It's so
factor
true,
shine.
because I think about, when I'm hiring for our Seasonscapes team, and we've got some full-time people that work all year round with us, but we have some that come in seasonally. Now, I feel very blessed because we have a lot of people come back year after year. And I always say, I don't know what they're doing for the other 7 months of the year, but they come back because they really enjoy doing it. But when we bring somebody on, in fact, we just brought somebody on for the first day yesterday as what we call a tryout day. Does that person like being here? Because it's hard out in the warehouse, especially down here in South Texas. It's very hot out there. And do we like her? Is she gonna fit in with the team? We have a warehouse here, so and it's a pretty small team, even though we push out a lot of decor. So, but I know sometimes we'll get somebody in for a day, and within like a couple of hours, we're like, oh no, because the reality is, people can say, well, anybody can decorate a tree or a wreath, right? But
I don't believe that's true.
I don't believe that's true. I think it's got something to do with the creativity, and you can give people exactly the same items and tell them both to decorate the tree, and they could look very different depending on their abilities, right? So, we look for people that are creative and having that good eye, really. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing to bring up, and it really ties into the labor piece that we've been talking about, which is really, two benefits to, I think Natura is probably one of your largest clients. Yeah.
Thank you for your business.
You're welcome. But, it really plays into two reasons why we utilize your product. And I'll tie into the labor piece, but first and foremost, for those who are thinking about getting into the industry, and I talked about this early on, you really don't know what you don't know.
Absolutely.
And that can be very overwhelming, particularly when you have to put some money behind it, right? So what do I mean? Well, you're making these commitments very early on for product that you think you might use because you think a client's going to like it, but it could be that you don't sell it.
True.
And then you're sitting on inventory that doesn't get used, and maybe it's not popular in years to come. And so you're really having to kind of look into a crystal ball in terms of, well, what do I buy? At what quantity? And that's concerning, and I hear from a lot of people who don't do holiday or do in a very small way, that's really a concern. Like, I don't want to put a whole lot of money into something with the off chance that I'm able to sell it. And so utilizing your product, you don't buy it until you've already sold it.
Well, there's no risk.
There's no
risk. And thank you for the plug. We appreciate it. But I mean, there is none. Having said that, a lot of our audience is, on the fence about getting into Christmas big. So what would you say if you didn't use us, for instance, and buy pre-decorated, and we partner with you to provide everything that you need? What would you say the challenges could be for a smaller company, like really starting out into this?
Well, just like what I said.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you've got to put a lot of money forward. You're buying your PVC, you're buying your ornamentation, maybe you're even buying different color lights. And I mean, the list really goes on from props and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And it can really take a big investment, which again is quite risky.
Yeah.
But utilizing pre-decorated decor where you're purchasing it after you've already sold it, I mean, you can do as little or as much as you want. You can dip your toe in. You can really crank it up. You can go out and have a big sales push with, again, zero risk, because if you don't sell anything, you don't buy anything.
Yeah, yeah.
And this is probably where it's appropriate to talk about the other benefits to it, because we were talking about how labor is one of the biggest.
Huge.
Yeah, it's one of the things that's very difficult to scale, right? And it's one of the things that you absolutely need if you're going in and installing a lot of decor across the city in which you operate. And so what you'll see some people do is they have a need for designers to go out and do the installation of the work and effectively design on site.
For sure.
Right. And so you're going to quickly find that is one of your biggest limits to being able to scale what you're able to do, because like we said, not everybody has the eye for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So for us, we have all that designed at Seasonscapes. And yes, we have our design staff who's going in and saying, this is going to work well here. We need a customization on that, for here, so on and so forth, right? Still taking that design eye. But in terms of the actual decor, that's already been pre-thought out. That's already been designed and had your eye on it, which we can really appreciate.
Yeah.
So the point there is that we're not hiring designers to go do the installation. We're hiring installation people to go put up decor as we've instructed them to do it. And so when something's coming out of a box that's pre-decorated, it goes up really quick, right? So not only are they not designing it, they're installing it, but the efficiency that's gained there is huge. So they're also then able to go do a lot more installations.
I know
of
it's
the
been a
product.
game changer for you over the
Yeah, it
years.
really
I mean, I
has.
know that because I know you, so well personally. But and we're really glad. So again, for the audience that haven't done Christmas, can you think of any other challenges that you come across? We've talked about staff. We've talked about, financing inventory and putting it on the shelves, which may or may not sell. Any other challenges that come to mind about being in the business? Like,
I mean, certainly
if they're ready to put their, not just their toe, but jump all the way in.
I mean, certainly every industry, every business has its business challenges. I mean, again, from what is it that people are going to want? We've kind of talked about that. From how is it that I'm going to scale up my business? We've talked about that. Storage, right? Like, who's going to store this stuff?
Yeah.
We store it, and we charge our clients for that.
Okay, so you do charge, yeah.
Absolutely. And we tell them it's completely turnkey, from our design to installation to takedown to storage of this product to bringing it back again next year.
Yeah.
That can certainly, be a concern. We're fortunate enough to be in South Texas where leasing or renting space or owning space is not as expensive as it can be up in, the Northeast or over on the West Coast. But again, I mean, that's got to be built in, to your price. And we hear this time and time again, clients are like, I don't want to have to, install this stuff. And then where am I going to keep it? And, is it going to, look good when I bring it back out? You don't have to worry about that. We're going to take care of all of that. And then just the other things that we've talked about, with the ability to, at the end of the day, I think what I'm saying is protect the downside, right?
Yeah.
You're not going out and putting a lot of cash in a product that you may or may not sell. You're not hiring a whole bunch of people that you may or not be able to, put to work. And so I think if you have a mind, focused on that, protecting the downside and then being able to really scale, if this takes off, if you've got people who are approaching the right people, saying the right things, bringing in the right products, it can catch on very, very quickly.
So where is the sweet spot on who you sell to? What does that look like? Who is the low-hanging fruit that your sales and design people go out to sell to?
Well, not to offend anybody, because sales is not easy.
No, absolutely, it's not. Yeah.
Certainly doing what we do is very helpful because we have a very large customer base.
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier, for
that
sure.
we're able to talk to. And if you were to slice and dice that up, private office space, is going to have our largest number of clients. That's going to be followed by hospitality industry. Fewer clients, but larger revenue.
For sure. They generally have bigger budgets.
They have bigger budgets. They have bigger properties.
Yeah.
I mean, it really makes sense. Getting into, different facilities, multi-tenant office buildings, right, where all those private offices are housed. Those are really the four, main focuses. But you see decor everywhere you go.
For sure. Who would be, just from experience, who would be the type of client that you normally wouldn't chase? And I can think of one in my head straight away, but I want to see if you go there. And again, just for advice for listeners, to know that probably they're not your best pick for a client.
Well, on both sides of the business, restaurants are one that...
Bang!
Is that what you're going to say?
Well, there's another one too, and it begins with R.
Okay. Restaurants are definitely number one, right? Particularly ones that are, just starting out.
Yeah.
That is a super risky thing to do. And typically we're selling a 3-year, 36-month contract, right? So year one, our desire is to get all our direct cost out of that. The cost of the product and the cost to install, and with margin on our installation and storage. We want to get that out year one. We'll say, great, you do that year one, and they pay you, hopefully. Year two, they go out of business. Well, you've not made but a little bit of margin on the labor for the installation of that job.
Yeah.
And so that can be, super risky. On the flip side of that, and maybe you wanted to share your other thought on who not to approach.
Well, it begins with R.
Residential.
Residential. Bang, you got it. Great minds think alike.
There are some companies who do a phenomenal job going in serving residential clients. They've got a skill set that we don't. And I'll just be completely honest. There's residences that we do work for, but I would say it's more the ones that are kind of like museum-ish, not your kind of homey residence type of feel. And that's okay. We can do it. It's just difficult to scale. And really what I mean from even logistically getting in there and trying to figure out schedules that work. And then you get the phone call. I've got one light bulb out on the top of my tree.
And it's the liability, I always think,
And
with
there's a
residential. It's
liability.
completely different.
Yeah.
And I think it's also dealing with the customer, because it's always so much more personal when it's in somebody's home.
Sure.
Where if you're selling to a GM, a hotel, it's not so, it's business, right?
More transactional. They know that they need it. They can quickly tell if we're a good fit, and we are. And it's just a different type of interaction. At the end of the day, we're exchanging value.
Yeah.
And it's just, we focus on commercial properties.
Yeah.
We've found that, easier to scale and just more within our skill set, really, because those are the clients we already serve.
For sure.
So,
yeah.
And then I guess the other thing that I would add is anywhere that you can talk to one person and that cover multiple locations, that is, got to be at the top of your target list.
I always talk about that when I'm speaking at events around, like those low-hanging fruits, like, maybe a bank or a credit union that has lots of locations, but one decision maker. So you're having one conversation. And I know from experience that you've had a lot of success with that.
Yeah. It was fun walking out into your warehouse today and seeing some of those products being produced. But yeah, I mean, for the reasons that you just shared, being able to talk to one person, and typically, it's going to be a longer sales cycle. You'd expect that. They got to bring their marketing team in, and there's designers involved, and so on and so forth. But then you're just able to stamp out that work, and it's really great relationship to have and nurture and grow. But to be able to serve them really it becomes very efficient for organizations.
Yeah. So the other thing I want to touch on real quick, and you mentioned it a few minutes ago, is about the type of contracts. Now, you talked about like a 3-year program. Again, another question I get asked a lot. Well, do we sell it to them and then we just pay for install? Can you kind of explain why the 3-year program works really well for you guys and why you try and stick to that program?
Yeah, absolutely. Bottom line, there's a lot of efficiency that's created with that, right? You see a lot of companies who do what we do, certainly not at the scale that we do it. They're going and installing this product on site, then they've got to take it all down, and then it's like, okay, next year, what is it that you want? Whereas for us, we already know what they want. We've already had those conversations. We've already made those decisions. We already have the product. And the pre-decorated tree, just as it goes up, it goes back into that box. And we're really not interacting with changes. Of course, we'll allow changes and work with the client. But for 3 years, that's the design that they're going to have. And we've found that people really appreciate that. They're like, oh my gosh, I love the tree that we had last year. We're getting it back again. And so, the counter argument is, well, you're going to have the same thing for 3 years. And my question would be, well, growing up, how many years in a row did you have the same tree? Right?
I haven't thought about it like that before. Yeah. That's a good one. That's true.
Well, it's true. It feels good to see that, every year. And we all have memories, attached to those situations. Maybe that doesn't translate commercially, but at the end of the day, what I'm saying is 3 years we found to be a really good time frame. Think about your average office leases. They're typically 5 years. So if somebody renews their office lease, they're going to be able to see another design, that we've brought in and worked with, with the property manager or whatever on. So 3 years seems to work really well. From a pricing standpoint, it provides an annual price that seems very palatable for a lot of clients. And so we can do 2 years. We can do 1 year rentals. We'll take 3 years and extend them 4 years. There's a lot of flexibility,
which is great.
That we can work into that. But the majority of our clients, you just kind of got to think about it as the way to go is a 36-month lease or rental.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I feel like you and I could sit here for about 2 or 3 hours just pulling more thoughts, more information out. And I really do appreciate your time. We're going to kind of bring it to a close now. Sure. I think you've given some really good food for thought for people thinking about getting into this industry. And we'd love you to be a guest another time. And maybe we can dig in deeper on a subject. Pricing always comes up. Contracts always comes up. Safety training, things like that. So again, thanks for your time, Josh. And really excited that you were part of the show today.
Happy to do it anytime.
Take care.
Adios.
Bye, everybody.